in the heart of sub-Saharan Africa, where commerce meets progress. Welcome to Souk News, your source for business, economy, and development insight that drive nations forward. From the vibrant streets of Lagos, Africa's fastest economic hub, Souk News takes you on a journey of discovery, analyzing and reporting the facts that lay the foundation for growth and development. We don't just report the news, we create it. Souk News is more than a channel. It is a catalyst for change, spotlighting the stories that shape economies, inspire entrepreneurs, and fuel progress. Covering business, finance, technology, energy, and many more, Souk News provides a daily deep dive into the stories that matter, interviews with industry titans, and analysis that empowers your understanding of economic landscape. Join us daily as we dissect, discuss, and deliver the most relevant and factual news on business and the economy. Souk News is your trusted guide, empowering you with the knowledge to make informed decisions.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, it's another beautiful day. A new day, a new month. What a special day. Another opportunity for us to look at issues related to business, finance, and the economy. This is Early Exchange, and I am Femi Ayodele. As you know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming. We'll be looking at the highlights of the WTO Ministerial Conference. That's the World Trade Organization. And we use the opportunity to assess the leadership of the Director General and the performance and all the activities of these organizations. Don't forget, you can be part of this program. It is your program. That means your voice needs to be heard. All you just have to do is to go on our social media platform, on our YouTube page, to share your view using the hashtag Early Exchange. Blessing is here to also set your day rolling. Hello.
It is rolling already. You should get rolling.
Yeah.
Good morning, Femi.
Yeah. How are you
just
today?
roll because it's Friday.
Yeah. And happy new month.
Thank you. Happy New Month to you too.
What a strategic day.
It is, and I like the fact that what made a leap year happened yesterday, which was 29th of February, and so the world has leaped into a new month right now, which everyone is hopeful for it to be a month of marching forward and a month where good things will happen for you and I. We thank you for choosing to join the show this morning, and there are new developments. Don't worry about yourself. From where you're seated, we'll get you updated. Lovina Emma is waiting to do that. Good morning, Lovina.
Hello and welcome to News Update. I am Lavina Emma. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu yesterday commissioned the Red Line Rail hosted by the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. This iconic feat, inaugurated by President Bola Tinubu, marks a significant milestone in the city's transportation infrastructure. During his inaugural speech, Tinubu, who created Lamata some 20 years ago during his administration as governor of the state, praised the Lagos Area Metropolitan Transport Authority, Lamata, and the Lagos State government for their commitment to the project, emphasizing its potential to improve the lives of citizens. He noted on the infrastructure development that the country stands as an evidence of dreaming and democracy. According to him, it is not a crime to dream, and when you dream, dream big. When you put people at the center, you will realize the value of democracy. He noted the progress the state has made, starting from the realization of bus rapid transport system, BRT, ferry, upgrading of road networks, stressing that Lagos will be written in gold. Speaking to Nigerians through the platform, the president noted that change is possible and change we must achieve. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, during his speech, highlighted the modern engineering marvel of the Red Line, which stretches from Agbado in Ogun State to the iconic National Theatre in Igomu. The segment, inaugurated, covers 27 kilometers, featuring state-of-the-art stations and overpasses designed to enhance traffic flow. With the introduction of new train sets and ongoing efforts to expand rolling stock, the Red Line aims to eventually transport up to 500,000 passengers daily, with 37 trips promising significant benefits for commuters and the city's overall transportation system. Moving on, the Nigerian Senate has passed a bill to establish a National Assembly Budget and Research Office. This office would provide independent analysis of the national budget and monitor its implementation, aiming to improve the legislature's engagement with the executive branch on financial matters. Supporters of the bill argued it would enhance transparency and accountability, while also addressing past shortcomings in the House with the ability to fully consider the economic impact of legislation. The bill has been referred to a committee for further review before potentially being sent to the president for his signature. Away from Nigeria, Algeria is set to host a crucial summit in Algiers, bringing together leaders from 13 nations, including Russia, Iran, Qatar, and Venezuela, amidst challenges like declining demand for oil and gas and rising competition from renewable energy sources. The summit aims to foster coordination on investments, strengthen ties with purchasing countries, and enhance production capacity. The country's president, Abdelmajid Tebboune, who revealed this, also stressed the increasing importance of natural gas for socio-economic development and highlighted Algeria's role as a reliable energy supplier. As Europe seeks alternatives to Russian energy, Algeria has emerged as a significant gas supplier, ranking second in pipeline exports after Norway. With deals like selling natural gas to Germany's VNG, Algeria aims to solidify its position in the energy markets. Analysts see the summit as an opportunity to advocate for gas as a key energy source for the future, while addressing challenges like infrastructure needs and competition from other gas-producing nations. Finally, Meta Platforms, the parent company of Facebook, says it will stop paying Australian news publishers for their content on the platform. This decision comes after Australia passed a new law requiring tech giants to compensate news outlets for their content. Meta argues that the financial gain from news is minimal and disagrees with the law's structure. The Australian government has, however, criticized Meta's decision, claiming it undermines the sustainability of their media industry. This move removes a significant revenue source for major Australian media outlets, many of which benefited from the 2021 law. The government currently considering its next steps, which may involve appointing a mediator to set a fair compensation for Meta's use of news content. And with that, we conclude the news updates. I am Lavina Emma. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions on early exchange with Femi Ayodele and Blessing. Stay informed on Souk News.
All right, thank you, Lovina, for giving us the latest development across the globe. Now it's time for us to look at our big story for today. The big conversation has to be the highlights of the decisions made by world leaders at the World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference that was concluded yesterday. World leaders gathered together to arrive at some decisions. That's the topmost body, decision-making body when it comes to World Trade Organization. What are some of those decisions being taken by these world leaders? What will be the impact of these decisions? And how will that affect the economy globally? We have a guest analyst here who is here to provide a better insight as regards the decisions arrived at this conference. We are being joined by Abiodun Bamitele, who is a global affairs analyst. Abiodun, glad you have joined us this morning.
I want to say good morning, and it's a pleasure being here with you today again.
It's nice having you and set with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Now, before we look at the highlights of the decisions arrived at the World Trade Organization, the Ministerial Conference, I would like us to start by looking at the organization itself, which is the World Trade Organization under the leadership of Okonjo-Iweala, who is the first African and the first woman to have emerged as the Director General of that organization. Now, in the last 3 years, interestingly, on a day like this, March 1st, 2021, she became the Director General. What a strategic day. So how will you assess the leadership and the activities of the organization so far before we go to the highlights of the conference?
All right. One more time, let me say good morning to all our viewers out there. And using the, the platform as we are used to it in this part of the world, Happy New Month. It's just so exciting to note that our own Okonjo-Iweala, is a trailblazer. Being the first woman and also being the first African to be on that seat. Without any sense of sentiment, I want to say that while we might not say it has been all rosy and well with WTO since she took over leadership, we can also not take away the fact that she had demonstrated leadership. You will discover that the time that we are in all over the globe is a very, very, very difficult time. Maybe as we get into the discussion, maybe we might need to mention a few of that. But you will discover that, but for the leadership that she has provided, maybe together with her team, to be fair to them, the WTO will have disintegrated further. Even though there are still a few cracks here and there, but it will have disintegrated further. So the capacity to still hold the organization together is something that nobody can take away from her. Number two is the fact that you will discover that since she took over leadership, the drive to ensure that the different blocks of the world are enhancing their game as far as commercial activities is concerned can also not be taken away. And then maybe thirdly, you discover that one of the key roles of WTO is to ensure that the member nations because everywhere 2 or 3 people are interacting together, there will always be conflict, there will be misunderstanding and all of that. To the extent that she has been able to ensure that those things do not go out of hand. So I also want to give that to her. So we can go on and on. On a modest level, I will say she has not done too badly, even though there is always room for improvement.
All right. Against that line of the DG of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, having done so well. Now, at the ministerial meeting in Abu Dhabi, she did admit that things are tough at this time, being that multilateral trade is kind of like under threat because of the tensions around the globe. Now, before we get into some of the decisions, now what do you think is the situation currently, and what kind of threat does it pose to global trade?
Now, those threats are multi-level. Climate change, somebody might say, what has that got to do with, with business activities? Don't forget that whatever happens in the environment affects those who dwell there and who do transaction there. That's one. You will look at the matter of war going on. The Russian-Ukraine war started as though it's going to be something that will be within a short period and then will be over. We are already more than 2 years on that matter. We are still battling with it. And you will agree with me that there's nothing so productive and so, enhancing that happens in an environment where there's no peace. Then the further aftermath of that Ukraine-Russian war is that some nations are saying we are on the side of Russia. Some are on the side of Ukraine. You know what I'm talking about. That, if not well managed, will further polarize the global economy. And you will discover that all the unnecessary bottlenecks that shouldn't be there will begin to find their way in, because I want to ensure that I defend myself against you, I defend myself against you, and I ensure my leadership and all of that. So altogether, you discover that, the war going on, the climate change, also the matter of election management in some parts of the world, all of these put together are threats of their kind. And then also don't forget that as we speak, if you want to take the 2 major players, I'm talking about China now and the United States of America, it is becoming more visible that most of their, do I use the word most? Maybe a couple of their policy direction is not just in the matter of let's maximize or optimize our position. It is more of, I don't want this other person to either be at my level or bypass me. So when all of those issues become what is influencing policy decisions and all of that, it is not going to be, a bed of roses for the entire global economy. So it's a challenging time, really. And, you also, okay, maybe when we get into the aftermath, you will come to that. Some decisions that were reached, you will see a nation like South Africa and India, for instance, saying, we are not part of that. And you will remember that there's provision in the WTO framework that even if one nation out of the member nation says, what you are about to agree on, we are not part of that, that is enough to put that policy direction on a hold until they bring everybody onto. So an atmosphere of peace, an atmosphere of harmony and unity is actually always a necessary condition, for business transaction, business operations to thrive. Those are part of the, current challenges, and I think, facing them headlong will be maybe the way forward.
All right, let's look at the ministerial conference itself, which is the highest decision-making body when it comes to WTO. The conference is usually once in 2 years. Yeah. But if you look at how this conference has gone so far, will you say it has justified the purpose for creating a platform like this? There are those who say it's all about conversation. The actions are also very important. How significant could it be, the decisions arrived at these conferences and then the actions that ought to be followed with it?
Chooks, this will be my position. before there will be action, there must be understanding. An organization that has 164 members, before we can say this is where all of us want to go, there must be a platform where everything is put on the table. All right? To that extent, I will say that till eternity, WTO will be a needed and a useful platform. Don't forget that it is on that platform trade negotiations take place among nations. It is on that platform trade agreements significantly take place among nations. It is on that platform conflicts and misunderstandings are resolved. So how do someone now want to say such a platform will not be a needed and maybe a necessary platform that can actually drive operation? Yes, agree that talk is cheap. But my position is we must first talk. We must all be on the same page before we can now agree on this is what we want to do, this is what we want to do. So to that effect, I want to say that that platform is still needful, is still necessary, and you cannot take away the platform that is coordinating more than 90% of the global activities when it comes to commerce and trade.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there are different blocks, and the World Trade Organization has been the organization dealing with trade rules for a lot of percentage of global trade. Now, if the push for the different blocks continues, do you see a situation where the power or the ability of the WTO to coordinate global trade becomes weakened?
Maybe I should first say that one of the major drive of WTO currently is to ensure that those blocks are weakened. I don't want to use the word discouraged, but that is actually what it is. Because, permit me to make a statement from, the Holy Book. It says, when a house is divided against itself, it shall not stand. Look at WTO as a family. Now, father, mother, children. Who is that responsible father that will want to watch son A, daughter B, son C, and daughter E, saying we want to go our different way? So I think WTO will not even fold its hands to ensure that that happens. So everything that is needed to be done to ensure that that fragmentation does not happen is actually what I think WTO is working towards very seriously.
Now, part of the highlights of the conference is the fact that WTO is trying to finalize package to ensure that is able to implement its trade disputes the way it ought to be done internationally. In your own perspective, what do you think can be done differently when it comes to the intervention from the WTO when it comes to resolving trade disputes among nations?
That's a tall one, because number one, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a conflict, but the truth of the matter is, I think leveraging one's years of experience in different levels of engagement, when sincerity is the rule of the game, and there is openness, there is continuous communication, oftentimes no conflict is too difficult or complex to resolve. It might be hard, it might be difficult, but oftentimes people will always move to a point where they said, okay, a little compromise there, a little compromise there. You will remember that one of the discussions, I wouldn't know whether it eventually came up, but as I was looking at, part of what the highlight was going to be, WTO has, a legal platform, which is like a court, where some of matters like that you are referring to, are being addressed and all of that. I think I discovered that it was one of the major items to be discussed, that how do we strengthen that legal entity such that it is fully empowered to ensure that when nations have conflict, whatever is agreed at that platform is agreed by both parties, and it becomes what galvanizes, operation going forward. I think if that discussion actually came to the fore and they were able to do a good work in that regard, that will have further strengthened the capacity of WTO to resolve conflicts among organizations when they have such.
Now, one of the things they discussed at the meeting was the issue of banning government subsidies for fishers and the impact on fishermen around the globe. Why is the WTO looking towards that?
Well, there might be some other reasons, but one of the earliest one that jumped at me is this. WTO is always having at the center of its discourse sustainability and basic economics. You know, anything that is subsidized, what you are trying to do is you want to make it attractive for the stakeholders there to further, you know, push as far as that area is concerned. WTO is saying that the rate at which fishing and fishing activity is going on in most parts of the world, given the various kinds and levels of support that the government of different countries is giving in that direction, if we do not put a little check on that, we'll discover that we are getting the best of today, but at the expense of tomorrow. So why not let's ensure that while we are not hindering fishing business, the fishermen, and maybe the stakeholders that are there, what do we do to ensure that we also sustain the environment and we also sustain that business for the future? I think that is actually a critical matter, you know, that is, you know, brought about the matter that you just raised now. To the extent, to what extent they were not able to reach a compromise on that is what I cannot tell, because I'm here to actually look at the final report of that meeting, you know, in detail.
All right, let's look at the decision that was taken as regards e-commerce, and I'm going to read out to you. It says WTO members do not currently agree on whether to extend what is effectively a ban on applying duties to electronic transmissions. The moratorium in place since 1998 will expire this year if no agreement is made. Okay. Now, what will be the implication of that? You know, it was expected an agreement would be made in this regard, but at this forum, no crucial agreement could be made. What will be the impact of that on e-commerce and in coming months?
The truth of the matter is that, you know, the moratorium you just referred to was a 25-year moratorium, and that, like you mentioned, just expired. And the provision of it is such that let's leave the e-commerce platform, because as at then, I'm just thinking that maybe as at then when, you know, the moratorium came up, that's 25 years ago, e-commerce was just more or less like evolving. Now, let's give it a breathing space. Let it have opportunity to grow. Let's see how everything evolves. But some people are saying that in some parts of the world, e-commerce is even almost taking over the chunk of what you can call, you know, their investment portfolio. Now, if that is the area that is not subject to any kind of tariff, some nations are losing a lot of money. And I'm talking about nations that are actually highly technological endowed. So the question now is, if this is my area of comparative advantage, and that is the area where WTO has excluded me from having to earn, I think there is a need now to sit down and look at that again. Now, I don't see that as something that will be a major challenge if all parties involved are sincere, the facts are placed on the table, and we are all able to come to the point of, it's not going to be a one winner takes it all matter. It's going to be something that affects everybody. I'm just hoping that they will be able to get to a point where that policy is reviewed, and whatever the next decision is going to be is also going to be a win-win for all the parties. Because don't forget, all the member nations are not all at the same level of development, whether in terms of technology, in terms of e-commerce, whatever parameter you want to look at. All that is my concern is, whatever the new policy will be, let it be something that is fair, that is just, and that accommodates everyone that is on that platform.
Talking about accommodating everyone on the platform, recall when we talked about the move to ban subsidies for fish by the WTO. Now, India Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, who was in New Delhi at a textiles event, repeated in a statement that was posted to the WTO website India's insistence on a controversial standalone permanent waiver to WTO rules that currently restrict domestic agriculture subsidies on food items like rice. So India is holding out on agreement regarding subsidies on food subsidies. What's your take on it? India pushing for a permanent standalone waiver on that.
You know, one needs to really understand the full context of what you just read. But very sincerely, maybe this one now has nothing to do with what's my professional word, you know, as an individual. I will not entirely, you know, oppose the position of this person. Because listen, my house has to first be in order before you can be talking about what I am contributing to the center. Why did India take that position? They just discover we are taking care of others, but our local industries and our people, so to speak, are suffering. Suffering now in quote, because suffering is a very relative word. But the point is, whatever policy that you are bringing to fore, I will be at peace with it for as long as it's not making me being wicked first and foremost to my people. So I think at the end of the day, what will be most important is how do we find a midpoint? So India cannot stand alone forever because the world has become a small village where I need you, you need me. But in the bid of making us work together, I must first take care of my home because it is said that charity begins at home. So from that viewpoint, I will not entirely say that position is a position that should not be considered. But how do we have a compromise so that a little move here, such that it becomes a win-win matter? I think that is what WTO and its leadership should actually be looking at. Don't forget that South Africa also said no to another policy that 125 members agreed to. But South Africa says, I have looked at this. I don't think I'm going to be part of that. And because of that, we said, okay, let's put it on hold. Maybe when we get to the General Council of WTO, the discussion can go there further. So it's neither here nor there. It depends on what is driving, you know, that decision in the first place.
All right, the conversation is getting more interesting, but we need to go on a break now. When we return, the conversation will get bigger. Stay with us.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas Touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
My name is Yinka Babalola.
My name is Ijoma Pelokoro.
My name is Joshua Hassan.
I am Rotarian or Mosunde Lawson.
It's Ife Yunwarita Ejeze. My friends call me Ife.
My name is Rotarian Lola Dare. I'm inviting you to keep watching Souk News. It's the right station to tune to.
I like Souk News. Souk News is good.
I want to charge you all to listen to Souk News, watch the news.
You can have unlimited news, first time.
Find Souk News. Be with Souk News. Never switch off. You are better for it. Souk News is the real thing.
Listen to their coverage and you'll be glad you did.
Turn to your YouTube, turn to your Instagram, turn to all your digital channels and look for Souk News.
Keep watching.
Keep watching.
Please guys, keep watching
Souk News.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas Touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, if you're just joining us, you're at the right place. We got you covered. We are still in the business of shaping policy and advancing development with our conversation. And a big story for today has to do the highlights of the decisions taken at the World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference. And we still have our guest analyst here with us. Glad to know you're still here with us.
Thank you.
Great one. So let's make the conversation get bigger now.
Okay.
By looking at what's a need for Nigeria, because someone is looking at, okay, what's the connection between what is happening at the World Trade Organization with what is happening in Nigeria? Set the ball rolling.
Well, firstly, know that while we still say we have local market, we have international market, that, what do we call it now? That distinction is getting thinner by the day, because the world has become a global village. So to the extent that Nigeria is part of WTO, first and foremost, I want to say that that creates a larger platform for Nigeria to be first and informed as to what are the opportunities around in other parts of the world. It's also another opportunity for Nigeria to say, this is what I have got to offer the world. Then you will move from there to say, how do we get to a point where what I have to offer, what you have to offer, has a place where they can shake hands. So in a way, I would therefore say that it's actually a platform to showcase who you are, showcase what you have got, and no doubt about that, we have a few things to show the world, that this is who we are, this is what we are. The DG of WTO, I guess it was immediately after that meeting, visited Nigeria briefly, and I saw a little recap of what a discussion with the president is all about. And she said, I just came here. First and foremost, I always want to remind myself that I'm in Nigeria. And when the meeting was over, I saw a few hanging fruits on the table. And I just felt I needed to tidy that up with the president. And she gave an affirmative promise that before I think before the second or third quarter of this year is over, X amount of FDI should be flowing into Nigeria. In fact, she said, I will be leading, I think I remember that's what she said, I will be leading X number of business leaders around the world to this nation. So it is a platform where, Nigeria, it gives Nigeria opportunity to position itself, get itself ready, have an idea of what is ahead, what is coming, and get ready to take those opportunities.
Okay, let's look at that. Nigeria positioning itself for foreign direct investment. Now, Dr. Konjo-Iweala can only do a bit in trying to redirect the attention of investors, global investors, to Nigeria. But what does the country have to put in place in order to convince those investors and retain them? Some investors have come and gone.
Now, while I'm not a politician and I don't feel, I'm here on that platform, the truth of the matter is there's no hiding place for anyone anymore. And business people have developed the capacity to read through the lines, either when you are speaking, even your body language, what you say, what you did not say, your policy direction, and all of that. To be fair to the present administration, I think while it is not all applause yet, because we are still grappling with a lot of issues, people just want to see that you are sincere, you are going to be truthful to your promises, and that you are taking little steps in the right direction. I think all of that is working for Nigeria currently. I don't want to say more than that, but I feel that a few decisions and a few steps that this administration has taken thus far is sending enough signal to business people around the world to say it looks like Nigeria seems to know where it is going. And for people who can be visionary enough to see beyond the present, they are already possibly want to take. Business at the end of the day is a matter of risk, but you want to ask yourself, with what I'm seeing on ground, is the risk level manageable? Can I see a turn at the end of the tunnel? If you ask me, there are a few fundamentals that seem to be showing that we are taking a few short steps, but in the right direction.
All right. Still talking about Nigeria and the interest that should be protected. Interestingly, the DG of this organization is a Nigerian.
That's right.
But do you think the Nigerian government has been able to maximize this opportunity, to have taken advantage of having a Nigerian as the DG and a platform like this to, create rooms for more investment? And then if this opportunity is going to be well maximized, what are the comparative advantages for Nigeria? What are the strengths? What are the things that Nigeria should put forward to be able to maximize this opportunity that we might not likely get after now?
Now, firstly, let's establish that there's only so much, Okonjo-Iweala can do. There's an adage that says that while it is easy for you to compel a horse to follow you to the river, the question is, can you force that horse to drink water? Now, I was on a platform yesterday where we were discussing a matter, and someone said, the only challenge I have with Nigeria is that it is so much talk, but little or no action. And I remember saying that while I agree with that position, the context of that discussion, that will not be right, because few steps have been taken. Take, for instance, before now, as painful as that decision is, the removal of subsidy is a major step in the right direction for us as a nation. Why? Is it because subsidy is not in other parts of the world? That is not the point. It is because subsidy, as far as the oil industry in Nigeria is concerned, was shrouded, is that the right word now? In a lot of secrecy, corruption, falsifications, and all of that. And then secondly, there's no part of the world where subsidy is targeted primarily at consumption. Subsidy that will give result is always channeled towards production. So that alone, while it cannot stand and suffice on itself, but that single step alone has said so much to people who understand economic dynamics. To say that this much that we are putting into what we cannot actually see the results, if we begin to rechannel, then we're going to move from here to here within this period of time. I want to say that at the national level, maybe the federal level, I seem to be seeing some positive policy direction. But if you ask the same at the lower tiers of government, I am not sure we are really ready. Look at what happened the last couple of days. People are shouting basic things people cannot make, but none of us knew until when the news came out to say that virtually all the states have been receiving allocation in excess of 30 billion naira separate from their statutory allocation. The question is, tell me how many states in Nigeria that you can really say that that additional fund that is being received is channeled towards infrastructural development, human capital development, and all of those other things that actually drive, economic enhancement. So I want to say that we might not blame the DG of WTO for our predicament. She is there, is an opportunity for us, but people no longer do things on the platform of sentiment. If you are not ready, you are not ready. But I want to believe and hope that as we speak, governors, local government chairmen, even councillors at their lower level will begin to see where the entire world is going and begin to see what they need to do to ensure that Nigeria is fully ready to take advantage. That woman is not going to be there forever. So the earlier we get ourselves ready and take advantage of that time, this time that she is there, the better for us.
Okay. Now, looking into the future, good enough, this is your field, human capital development. So, there are indications that Nigeria may obtain fresh $500 million loan from the World Bank come May 2024. Now, this is to bolster the country's human capacity development. Do you see this as worth doing? When we say human capacity development in Nigeria, what exactly should be the interpretation of that?
Now, before I answer that question, it will be important for our viewers to be well informed, to know that this administration, if they eventually get this $500 million, it won't be the first they are getting from World Bank. In June 2023, this administration got $750 million. I'm talking about everything I will be saying now will be only World Bank. I'm not talking about other agencies. Now, $750 million, that was meant to boost the power sector. Later in June of that same year, another $500 million was gotten from World Bank. That was meant for women empowerment. In September of that same year, there was another $700 million, which was said to be channeled towards girls' education. And then in December of that same 2023, there was another $750 million, which was meant to be channeled towards renewable energy. Put together in 2023, $2.7 billion. Now, should that be a concern? Yes and no. Yes, if when you look at the debt to GDP ratio of most African nations, in fairness, Nigerians is still possibly one of the lowest. All right? Which means that borrowing is not actually the issue. The issue now for me is, let's look at those 4 areas that I mentioned earlier. They are not areas of my primary expertise. I will not be able to very sincerely say how those funds were judiciously used or not. If they were, then kudos to the government, because that is step in the right direction. But the question is, what if it is not? Because I was in a forum not too long ago, and I pray that what that individual has said is not true. He said most of the government projects that they have evaluated on their side, they discover that the value for money at the end of the day is just about 40%. What does that mean? If 100,000 is spent on a project, by the time you evaluate the end value chain, at the end of the value chain, you estimate the value of that product, project. What you will discover is that, what amount did I mention earlier? Did I say 100,000?
Yes, 100,000.
Now, what you will see here will just be 40% of that.
Which is like 40,000.
Which is like 40,000 naira. 60,000 naira has grown wings along the line. Therefore, My concern is not the $500 million. Those were meant to be used for two things. They said, number one, to support basic education, and then number two, to facilitate primary health. Okay. If we can beat our chest to say, this is what we got, and this is what we have used for this project, I will say it is a right step in the right direction. But if not, it might just be another food for the boys.
Interesting. And now you've raised something crucial now, which has to be the fears of many Nigerians. You can't just wish away that. Now, this is the reality to deal with. Now, going by this reality, what do you think the federal government can do to address this distrust or fear? Because if these exist, this loan is just going to look like the other ones where you don't see the justification for it. These loans are obtained at a crucial time like this that Nigeria is dealing with its serious economic issues. What step do you think the federal government should do to convince its citizens that this time around, if this loan is being approved, we're going to do it rightly, and then to also ensure that, the right mechanisms are put in place to ensure that this loan is just like you said, money for the boys. It won't be like that.
Now, you know, one of the very comforting things for me when I was looking at this entire loan proposal, I saw the executing agencies clearly spelled out. That will include the Federal Ministry of Education, the Universal Basic Education Commission, then the Federal Ministry of Health, and there's one other one like that, that I can't readily remember now. For me, it looks to me that it therefore becomes easy to really establish who do we hold accountable. But then, who do we hold accountable is still a matter of trust and confidence. I just want to hope, all right, and that we will hold each of these executing agencies accountable. The next question people will want to ask is, what has been the trend? Even when you are saying you want to hold people accountable, to what extent? That is where you only want to subscribe to hope. That with the little things we have seen thus far, because in fairness, it has been a long time where you will get to hear that one or two officers of government are putting their hands where they are not supposed to put it, and you see a level of immediate reaction. It might not have been as much as what we want, but it is happening gradually. I just hope that we will intensify that, because immediately people know that whatever I do has consequences, and the consequences has no regard for who you are or your person. People will do what is right. So, answering your question directly, therefore, I want to say we need to intensify the consequence dimension of everything that we do as a people. You go to other parts of the world, people that will not be on a queue to do things here, they get there. What do? They just fall in line. Why? Because they know that the system and structure of that environment has no regard for persons or their titles and all of that. I just hope that we will intensify the little sparks of the right thing that we were saying, so that people know it is no longer business as usual.
All right. This time, it's not about business as usual, but about business. So I want to take us back to the WTO ministerial meeting. Now, there at the meeting, apart from the WTO having a general meeting to arrive at some consensus regarding global trade issues, countries that had trade issues with themselves were sorting it out. Now, let's look at one of the trade issues between China and the U.S. So, the U.S. trade representative at the WTO meeting, Catherine Tai, was at the meeting, and after acknowledging what the meeting was about, charting the course, a path to the future, she also met with the Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao, and then she raised concerns about China's excess steel capacity impacting global markets, and according to her, the ongoing imbalances caused by China's state-led non-market approach to trade policy. But here, we're finding it hard to locate or in the report of WTO ministerial meeting the activities of many African countries sorting out trade issues, the activities of Nigerian trade representatives sorting out trade issues. Is that to say that Nigeria does not have trade issues to sort out?
Well, you know, you will agree with me that in a meeting of that magnitude, reporters will not report all that happened from A to Z. And then you reporters, you know that what sells your report is when you are talking about the big boys. So the fact that what came to the fore was the US, the China discussion and all of that, I do not want to believe that those were the only discussions that took place there. So maybe those were the ones that were big enough for
to be
global,
newsworthy.
of course, you know, and then that would drive traffic for reporters, for people to read and all of that. I want to believe that anyone who has gone to that meeting went there with a mindset of, I have this and this and this and this to sort out. So that TDL should guide what actually happens there. So the fact that it wasn't reported for any African country and it wasn't specifically reported for Nigeria would not necessarily mean that such things actually did not take place. That would want to be my my reaction.
All right, well, let me take you back to something you mentioned earlier. You know, while we're talking about India's position regarding the ban on food subsidies.
That's right.
You also mentioned South Africa objecting to a particular motion that it considered not favorable for the country.
That's right.
But we still do not have any report of that regarding Nigeria. I'm not saying that the country should be noisemakers at the meeting, but at a global forum like that, where Nigeria has some trade issues, there have been reports of barriers to trade between Nigeria and some countries. There have been reports of some Nigerian exports being rejected. Don't you think that was the right forum to bring up such issues, even on the banning on agricultural subsidies? Do you think Nigeria should have also spoken up?
My position is still the same, that the fact that we did not read that on the pages of newspaper or on the various media might not necessarily mean that such things don't take place. However, you know, Lin Kuan Yew in his book, From Third Word to First Word, said something that I want to pray that has been in the past. He said, you know, when African representatives come for great meetings where people are discussing major things and all of that, you know, I don't want to tell you what he said because I hope it is still no longer the truth. He said, well, you just see them, you know, they are going around shopping, you know, some of them that are male even came with women that will be, you know, taking proper care of them. I'm sure you understand what I mean and all of that. So I want to believe that that era is gone. So the fact that it wasn't reported in the media might not necessarily mean those things did not happen. However, maybe just to further give credence to what you said, if there have been critical matters that were critical enough for global attention discussed, possibly, maybe we'll have seen that. But I also still don't want to agree that possibly there were no discussions at all and nothing actually happened. Maybe, you know, they were not just big enough discussion to warrant being in the forefront of me. So let's agree that that's what happened.
Or let's assume and hope that's
and
what
let's
happened.
hope that that's what happened.
Okay.
All right, interesting. Let's wrap up with this.
Okay.
The essence of this $500 million loan is to facilitate human capital development in Nigeria, if approved.
That's right.
Now, what are your recommendations on how this money should be utilized or allocated, and what areas or sectors or projects should be included in this kind of agreement?
Now, remember I said earlier.
Interestingly, that's your area of expertise.
Well, you know, like I mentioned the last time I was here, anytime I hear that word, human capital development, everything in me just, don't forget that Nigeria is still one of the nations where the number of out-of-school children is the highest. Talking about that in this kind of a time is not something we should applaud ourselves for. It's a thing of shame. Therefore, if, like it has been stated, that part of this fund will be used to further strengthen our basic education mechanism, I would be so glad to see that while strengthening existing infrastructure that we have in the educational sector, the basic education in particular, which is very fundamental and foundational. Secondly, I would like to see government trying to incentivize education such that all those children that are out there find their ways back into school. Because it has been established, it's not a matter of argument. Illiteracy and poverty, they go hand in hand. And by extension, poverty and crime go hand in hand. Go and do a study. Anywhere you see a significant number of children not being educated, at least at the foundational level, you can be rest assured poverty will also be high, and then the propensity to crime will also be high. So to the extent that we are grappling with insecurity, we are grappling with a lot of matters around that, maybe that would be a right step in the right direction. So if those two things are given attention to, that would be fine. Now, coming to the area of primary education, I have not checked that statistics in the recent time, but as at the last time, mortality rate in this part of the world is also still one of the highest in the world. Therefore, ensuring that basic health facilities are made to be very close to people. There are things you will hear, you feel like weeping. Someone will need to travel several kilometers just to have access to the minimum and the lowest level of medical service. I think these are things that we should be thinking of. How do we take that out of our narrative? Those will be my area of recommendation. If the fund, because the fund I don't think will be able to answer all of the questions, meet all of the problems, but if we give priority to those areas that I've just mentioned, I think to an extent I will be fulfilled. However, I have just said what I have said. I want to believe that before the loan was even requested for, they will have articulated areas of need. I just hope that there were areas of priority that will get immediate benefit to the people.
Now, addressing out-of-school children without addressing insecurity, would that lead to any success in that?
See, if you look at the scenario I painted, the question would be, now come to the matter of egg and chicken. Which one
comes
came
first?
Because we cannot, you can't separate the two. Someone says one of the reasons why in this part of the nation there are things you won't see is because people are relatively informed. There are things I will ask you to go and do now. Before you carry that action, because you are schooled, you are intelligent, you can evaluate and analyze things, you want to ask what this person is asking me to do. Why should I do that? If I do that, what happens to me? What is the impact? But the less people are informed, the less they can take intelligent decisions. And then the more they are available to be used as tools for what we are just talking about. Insecurity, do you think somebody who has a good job in his hand who had built up asset and all of that, then someone says to you, we want you to go and be someone that will, go and be a suicide bomber and all of that. You want to say to yourself, no, I'm not available for that. I have something to live for. So we can't totally separate them. I think they go hand in hand. Why government is seeing the best they can do to ensure that security is ensured, it has to be going, because it is those children that don't go to school that are used to feed this other side. I think that would be my thought.
Thank you very much, Abiodun Bamdele, who's a business and human capital development expert, has been with us on the show, looking at the outcomes of the 13th Ministerial WTO, World Trade Organization meeting in Abu Dhabi, and we've also looked at the loan that will soon arrive from the World Bank to Nigeria, the $500 million loan for human capacity development and also to take care of some of the challenges with primary health. Thank you so much for your submissions on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure being here.
And we've enjoyed having you here as well.
Thank you.
Let's take a quick break. Early Exchange continues after this time. Don't go anywhere.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas Touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
My name is Dr. Rafiu Oladipo.
My name is Baba Jalal Repega.
I'm Reverend Juliet Benite.
I'm Godio Didi.
My name is Professor Oladokun Sulaiman Olarawaju.
Sook News is on the ground, loading.
Very enlightening, very educative, and entertaining.
Thank you to Sook News.
So I'm happy that Sook TV has come into existence.
I'm happy to be here in the Sook News.
I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel and keep watching news that makes sense.
As Browning said, one's extension of one's reach should not exceed one's grasp, or what is heaven for. And I think Sook News is doing that.
Africa needs a voice of truth, and Sook News has become one of them. And get ready, get ready, get ready.
And keep watching.
Keep watching Sook News.
Keep watching Sook News. It's a place to be.
Keep watching Sook News.
On social media, many Nigerian young companies were celebrating, wow, we raised Series C, we raised Series D. And anytime they raised these monies, everybody hailed them. But what was behind it? What is behind every raise is that the entrepreneur founder is diluted significantly. We had a very interesting session, and in one of the sessions, there was a role play about a case study on CWG PLC, which is a company that I founded. And the case was written by Columbia Business School to discuss a point about venturing, about entrepreneurship, and about funding for the enterprise. And the case ended on a question: should Austin Okere take the venture capital investment or should he reject it? Just a little bit of background. So this is a company, CWG, in 2005 that was doing very well. It was riding on the back of the Y2K that just happened at the turn of the century, was riding on the back of the telecom boom that happened immediately after the civilian government of OBJ and GSM was launched, was riding on the back of the bank consolidation in 2005 that was done by Governor Soludo. And in each of these booms, CWG had positioned and taken good advantage. So this is not a company that was in dire need of cash or was desperate in 2005. But we had a plan to list our shares on the stock market, and we thought that the best way to do it was to first do either a private placement or, better still, to do a venture capital fundraise so that they will bring discipline into our operations, governance, strengthen our governance, and of course, bring more technical knowledge. And if people saw that this company was invested in you, probably it will make the listing on the stock exchange more attractive. The issue here is at what price? And I remember that I've discussed something similar on this on social media, where Many Nigerian young companies were celebrating, wow, we raised Series C, we raised Series D. And anytime they raised these monies, everybody hailed them. But what was behind it? What is behind every raise is that the entrepreneur founder is diluted significantly. So if I use CWG as a case study, the case that was written by Columbia was that there was an offer of $8 million for 25% of the company, putting the valuation post at $32 million. Make no mistake, the Treasury bill's interest rate is 15% sometimes. Now, if someone is going to bring his money to invest in your company, he's looking for way more than that 15%, given that there's a high risk that his money will not come back. And the rule of thumb is that they're looking for 3 times what they brought in within 5 years. So in our case, they were going to be asking for $24 million within 5 years, or you list and give them a liquidity event or an exit. You have to check very well that this $8 million that you're taking in, you can do business in such a way that the value of the company can cough out $24 million in 5 years, regardless of exchange loss. Here is where it gets complicated. So you receive $8 million, which is converted to you in Naira. 2005 probably was about 130. Now, whether the Naira suffers devaluation or not, you're going to pay that $8 million. Now, paying $8 million 5 years later, where the Naira is maybe 250 or 260, whilst you are generating your revenue in Naira, becomes almost impossible. And if the venture capital firm then has to take assets because you can't pay, he will end up owning, of course, a big chunk of your company, nothing at all. You begin to look like a management staff in the company you founded. So in our own case, we held out and we didn't take the money. And in 2009, when we took a subsequent one, the company was valued at $55 million, plus that there'd been an exchange loss. So the company was valued much more than the $32 million, and plus the fact that in Naira terms, they would have owned more of our company. My point being, don't sell your seed. Rather, till your seeds, let it grow into a fruit, and sell at the fruit, because the fruit is plentiful. A lot of our startups rush out to sell their seed, and they sell it cheap. To complete that story, we actually then listed the company in 2013 for $90 million. Now, I did a rough calculation. If we were in dire need of money and we borrowed $8 million at an interest rate of 20%, at that time Naira, we'll be returning Naira money, and we'll be returning something like, even if you take 100%, we'll be returning another $8 million in 5 years' time. But given that the company's valuation had gone to $55 million in that time, 2009, when the second PE company invested, we would have been better off taking the debt, because we'll be returning an extra $8 million, rather than 8 times 3, which is 24, that would have had to give $24 million that would have had to pay the VC company if we had taken the money at that time. So the delta is huge in terms of debt versus equity. So the point is, at some point in time, equity seems cheap, deceptively, but debt is cheaper. Especially at the early stages, what you have is a seed. You don't sell your seed. Have patience, hone it, bootstrap it, take debt to finance specific deals, makes you disciplined, and then when you have your fruit, you can then invite investors to come, and you make more, and you don't lose a huge percentage of your company. You actually do still own a huge percentage of your company. Be patient. Don't rush out to collect funds and celebrate it. You will have to pay back.
My name is Dr. Agility Obi.
My name is Etemari Glover. Naomi.
Well done, and shout out to Souk News.
Shout out to Souk News. I want to encourage everyone to keep watching Souk News. Shout out to Souk News, and yes, tune into them.
Keep watching Souk News. They are one in town.
Hey, we're watching Souk News.
Keep watching Souk News.
Keep watching Souk News. Catch them on YouTube and all social media channels.
Hey, my name is Frank Edowo, and I'm imploring you. No, forget that. I am forcing you, coercing you to always stay tuned to Souk News for your news requirements.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas touch, and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix, and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, we're still in the business of shaping policy and advancing development. And now we want to look at the development as regards the African continent. We want to review the decision taken recently by ECOWAS to lift the sanctions on Mali, Burkina Faso, in these countries where you have military rule. Now, what will be the implication on the part of ECOWAS and on the part of these countries? What are the call to actions for these countries to be able to get back to where they should be? And globally, there are concerns about lifting the sanctions. What are these concerns? We have a special guest here with us. We have Dr. Ken Nkewa with us, who is a business and policy analyst, also a lecturer at the University of Lagos. Glad to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Femi. It's nice to be back on.
I love your outfit.
Thank you. It's in memory and or celebration of one of my mentors.
Oh, great.
You guess who? Larry King.
Oh,
good to know. Good morning.
Morning, blessing. Nice seeing you again. Happy New Month.
I wish you same. And does your look, apart from it being in celebration of the memory of Larry King, having to do with it being a new month, you wanting to look new?
Something new for the new month.
Okay.
A good way to end the quarter. And a lot of positive things are happening in the country. Let's stay positive. Let's stay optimistic. It can't be all sad and gloom for us. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But whether the hope is renewed or not, the important thing is at least there's hope.
Okay. So we'll keep that close to our chest.
Thank you. All right. Now let's look at the story for this hour, which is to look at the decisions taken by ECOWAS. In its own wisdom, decided to lift the sanctions on these countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and the rest. What do you make of this decision? And then what will be the implication for these countries that are affected and also the African continent?
All right. I would want to say start by congratulating ECOWAS for doing the right thing. But before we arrive at that junction of congratulating ECOWAS and go full deep into the analysis, it's important we start with asking the question: did we have to get to this point, where we are even having incursions into democratic systems and destabilizing what had hitherto been considered as stable governments in some of these countries. Because I have always said that coups, or whatever you want to call it, whether it's an intervention for liberation, they would usually have a contagion effect. And so it happens in one country, and the neighboring country wants to pick it up, and then they begin to build a new dominant ideology around it. And before you know it, the entire region, is in trouble. And I think as we stand, even in one of these countries, there has been a counter coup. We didn't really understand what was happening, but we heard, oh, there was another coup, But that said, this question and the issue still remains, why did this happen in these countries? Once we are able to address that, then every other thing becomes easy for us, to swim along with, and the oasis of empathy, of sympathy. For me, with the Alliance Duet Sahel, this is the alliance of these Sahel states, I do not empathize with incursion into politics. For all purposes, the worst democracy is still better than whatever reasons the military will have to say they have come into the governance of a state to begin to administer that state. But let's come back to the core and the meat of the discussion. The sanctions have been lifted. How did we even get to a point where sanctions were meted out to these countries in the first place? Now, we got to that point because in diplomacy, in diplomacy and diplomatic dynamics, there's something we call biases, okay? For instance, the people in the West, the countries in the West, they're looking at us, the countries in the South. The West are the developed countries. The South are, countries that are developing or underdeveloped or less developed countries. And they see us as unable to govern ourselves. We're poor, we're this, we don't have good roads. The kind of paradigm they sell, about Africa to their people. And when their people now come to Africa and see skyscrapers and see professors and see people like Femi and Blessing looking, even sounding more intelligent than their people. Something amazed Muhammad Ali when he came to fight in Congo, I think in 1976. And he upbraided the Americans and said, look, these people are very intelligent. He met Africans that could speak 3, 4, 5 languages, and some Americans can't speak more than just one language. But in diplomacy, people have to learn to contend with biases. And the two biases that led us to where we are today are, one, the anchoring bias, and two, the confirmation bias. What is the anchoring bias? It is the bias that makes you anchor your decisions, or that makes you take a decision on the basis of just one line of thoughts. Oh, these people have incurred, these people have disturbed democracy, sanction them, go and invade them, go and push them out. So you are anchored on a stream of thought that is, for me, pathetically driven by institutions in the West. Because not just a few days after that incursion into politics, Macron came, he met with the ECOWAS president, and the next thing we said there was going to be an invasion. Number two is a confirmation bias. When you take decisions to confirm what you believe in, what is your dominant paradigm, what is your dominant ideology, you take actions in that direction. So what we saw was decisions that were taken in the direction of anchored bias and confirmation bias. But now we have come back to the table to realize that was there a good reason for these people to have taken the decisions they took in their country to stop what was going on and to reset and reorganize their country? Yes. And how can we best handle this situation is through diplomacy, coming to the table. And coming to the table begins with lifting the sanctions and giving them at least the opportunity to breathe.
All right, according to ECOWAS, the sanctions are lifted on humanitarian grounds amidst the tensions in these countries. But lifting the sanctions now, do you think it's coming too late? Because these three countries have said they pulled out of ECOWAS: Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso.
All right, so that will appear to be a contradiction. Because how can you be lifting a sanction off the shoulders of people that have said, we don't want to be friends with you anymore? But you see, as we evolve in democratic relations, we discover that In the 21st century, no country is insignificant. In psychology, we have what you call the insignificant order. So you can't look at a Comoro Islands. You can't look at, I mean, we saw that happen in the last football fiesta where we had the underdogs. And the underdogs came to the Nations Cup and disrupted everything. Some of them were almost, swinging their way into the finals. So there are no underdogs anymore in diplomatic relations. And what has just happened is a message, to us to say that, okay, we recognize your importance as, concrete parts of the West African bloc, even if you say you don't want to be part of ECOWAS anymore. You are one of us. We have said on this, show that, on this program, that Niger, Mali, and some of these countries, they produce for us, especially Nigeria, a first line of defense against intrusion of terrorists, of bandits coming down through the Sahel. So when you now come and say you don't want to have anything to do with such countries, it is to the detriment of ECOWAS member states to even say, okay, we exercise you from our midst and we can trade with you, we don't want to have anything to do with you. So in diplomacy, we speak a lot of English, a lot of grammar. We say it's on the basis of humanitarian ground. I don't believe that is the issue. I think those of us that have now decided that, no, these sanctions are not right, they are not prime, they are not proper at this point in time, it is in our own interest that we have lifted those sanctions and allowed these people to come back into the fray so that we can now have a proper basis for discussion. And I think I want to thank ECOWAS, and I believe that the President of the Federal Republic, he must be watching this program, because we did say on this program that that's not the best way to go. Open the doors to diplomatic talks, bring them in, and have a timeline. Let them discuss with member states what they intend to do for their countries and how they intend to restore their countries back to democratic rule. And I think they have answered, they have heeded. So it is kudos to Souk News, and it is kudos to ECOWAS.
All right, still talking about ECOWAS, the decision to place this sanction in the first place. Let's revisit it. Do you think at that point ECOWAS had another option? And what are the lessons, looking at how these has played out in a few months as regards this sanction, and now that ECOWAS will have to make a U-turn? What are the lessons? And then do you think in the first place ECOWAS had another option apart from putting a sanction on these countries?
That decision was a force majeure. It was a decision that was taken on the basis of, I would say, duress, because we know what transpired. I mean, we know how meetings were held between some countries in the West and, some leading countries down in the West African bloc, and immediately we heard, we're going to invade. You can't just invade a country. And that decision, in fact and indeed, was to the benefit, of the Sahel states, because what it ended up doing was to bond them together. And now they're even having economic bonds. They're thinking of pulling out of the, French franc or West African franc monetary union. I think it's called the ECOWAS, the Economic Monetary Union. They're pulling out of that. And they are thinking of forming an economic bloc where they can even have a single currency. They're exploring those options. Now, back to the core of the question. Did ECOWAS have options? I think the first thing is that decision was one decision too fast, too early. Too fast, too early. And the major lessons we can learn from that is this. Our leaders, our African leaders, must begin to learn to think independently. Because you question the degree of intelligence, the intellectual capacity of leadership in Africa when decisions are taken. And we see this in every nook and aspect of Africa, every nook and cranny of Africa, and in every aspect, in every facet of our socio-economic and socio-political lives. Okay? So for instance, you bring it down to economics. And this is one of the things that these chaps in the Sahel states are fighting for. You take a decision on our behalf. You take a decision on behalf of how much we can sell our resources to you. You take a decision on who can deal and trade with us. And we are saying no. And so you find the ripple effect coming back into Africa. We are ourselves behaving like our colonial masters. So I think the take home from all of this is that we should not take decisions on the basis of duress. We should involve and engage in strategic thinking before we take actions, especially actions that have multiplier effects politically, economically, socially, and otherwise. that for me will be the take home from what went wrong, which we are now trying to make, to go right. So bringing them to the table now means we can sit them down and talk and insist that democracy is an ideal form of governance for any African nation. That's what we want. So what is your plan to return your countries back to sustainable, dependable, and productive democratic rule? That's it. We need to have an SDP in governance in Africa. Democracy must be sustainable, democracy must be dependable, and democracy must be productive. A democracy that reinforces poverty of people, a democracy that reinforces subservience of nations to Western nations, a democracy that reinforces the inability of African countries to lift themselves away from being peripheral countries or being semi-peripheral countries to becoming core nations. Is not a democracy that should be tolerated or accepted in Africa. That's my take on that issue.
All right, bringing these nations back to the table to discuss with the ECOWAS, is that a possibility? Because remember that they have just quit the bloc. Now, this decision to remove the sanctions that was placed on them is also aimed at that, bringing them to rescind their decision. Is there a possibility in that?
Yes, a handshake that doesn't go beyond the elbow is an invitation to treat. In law, we call it an invitation to treat. That's, okay, so let's shake hands. I'm inviting you, let's discuss, okay? So I believe that these steps that have been taken in the last 1 week or thereabout is a good handshake. And it's a handshake that is an invitation, to these sister nations, to these brother nations, to say, okay, we will treat you as one of us, even though you have determined or you intend or you are intent on not being one of us anymore. So I see the strategic implications of this handshake, which has come in form of lifting the sanctions, which shouldn't have come into being in the first place. And I think that if managed properly, the issue here is, I always refer to two M's. Management and marketing is the soul of development and of international relations. If we can remarket the idea of the good things that will come out of coming back to, I mean, some people left. I think Mauritania left a couple of years ago. Some people left. And again, Morocco was even trying to join and, be an associate of ECOWAS. So there must be something good that comes out of ECOWAS. And it's not all, bad. It's not all quarrels. It's not all the differences. I think that there's more that could integrate us as far as the ECOWAS or the calculus of ECOWAS is concerned than differentiates us. So the handshake is good. We've lifted the sanctions. It hasn't gone beyond the elbow. Nobody's threatening anybody anymore. It's a good invitation to treat. I think what is now left is the burden on the Sahel states to sit down and have some considerations and make fantastic decisions in the interest of their people. And I want to believe that they are watching wherever they are, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and we are appealing to them to please come back. We are better together, we are stronger together than we would ever be if we were divided.
All right, now at the time that Niger, the coup in Niger happened, and then ECOWAS wanted them to return back immediately. It didn't happen, and then ECOWAS had to come up with those sanctions. There were some foreign influences that were alleged to be underlying Niger's position, and even the position of these other countries towards forming their own alliance. Now, do you think that this olive branch that ECOWAS is extending is timed? So let's see what happens. So if it happens that these three countries don't come to the table, they do not even take ECOWAS serious, is anything going to happen? Are we going to find ECOWAS revert to the position of imposing sanctions again?
Okay, time heals wounds. You've done fantastically well to describe it as an olive branch, that has been meted out, to these countries. In my own views and analysis, I do not expect that they would overnight decide to just come back, into ECOWAS that way. We need to look at the core of the issues on the matter. Okay, we need to look at the core of the factors, the result, the three, why these countries took the decisions they took, why the armies in these countries took, why the young boys, I like to call them, took the decision they took for the future of their unborn generations. And for those issues, those core issues to be settled honestly, Blessing, honestly, Femi, it will take time because they need to restructure their country economically. They need to restructure the DNA of the cultural fabric of their country. Okay? They need to restructure the dominant logic, the dominant ideology with which generations in these countries have grown up to. There is a country in between the West African and the East African bloc, you know, for good reasons. I won't want to mention that country. The leader of that country has been there, I think, since 1982. So we have millennials, we have Gen Zs, we have some baby boomers who were born and met this man right there on the seat. So for you to now deal with such a generation is going to take a lot of time. You bring it back home to the Sahel states. These are people that have seen nothing other than their thoughts being Frenchified, their dressing being Frenchified, their language being Frenchified, their thinking, their beliefs, their spirituality Frenchified. So to reorder that and create a new moral order and create a new social order will take some time. So my advice is to continue playing the democratic cards. We have dropped the ace now, which is withdrawing the sanctions, but actually allow those countries to reorganize themselves for their own kind of effective change and not force any system, not force any structure, not force any ideology on them. Let them evolve a new cultural ideology, a new political ideology, a new moral ideology, a new social ideology, and that way they will be better positioned to take their country to the promised land. Every country has a promised land they want to get to. And I believe that my own country, our own country, Nigeria, is on the track to the promised land.
All right, let's see how that plays out. It's time for us to go on another break. We'll be right back to have more discussion. Just stay with us.
Lateef Jakande. Born Lateef Kayode Jakande in the Ekpetedo area of Lagos Island, Lagos State, on July 1929. He studied at the Lagos Public School at Enuowa, Lagos Island, then at Bonham Memorial Methodist School, Port Harcourt, King's College, enrolled at Ilesha Grammar School, where he edited a literary paper called The Quarterly Mirror. Jakande began a career in journalism in 1949 with the Daily Service and joined the Nigerian Tribune in 1953. The owner, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, appointed Jakande editor-in-chief of the Tribune in 1956. Jakande established John West Publications in 1975 after leaving Tribune and began to publish the Lagos News. He served as the first president of the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, NPAN. Jakande ran for election as executive governor of Lagos State in 1979 on the Unity Party of Nigeria platform. His administration was effective and open and implemented the cardinal policies of his party. He introduced housing and educational programs targeting the poor, building new neighborhood primary and secondary schools, and providing free primary and secondary education. He gave poor people's children education, and many of them are now very prominent in the society today. Jakande established the Lagos State University and constructed over 30,000 housing units. After the military takeover in 1983, Jakande was charged, prosecuted, and convicted of treason and later pardoned. He served as Minister of Works under the Sani Abacha military regime. He died in Lagos on February 11, 2021. Lateef Jakande was the first civilian governor of Lagos State. Lateef Kayode Jakande, Souk Enlightenment. The heart of sub-Saharan Africa, where commerce meets progress. Welcome to Souk News, your source for business, economy, and development insight that drive nations forward. From the vibrant streets of Lagos, Africa's fastest economic hub, Souk News takes you on a journey of discovery, analyzing and reporting the facts that lay the foundation for growth and development. We don't just report the news, we create it. Souk News is more than a channel. It is a catalyst for change, spotlighting the stories that shape economies, inspire entrepreneurs, and fuel progress. Covering business, finance, technology, energy, and many more, Souk News provides a daily deep dive into the stories that matter, interviews with industry titans, and analysis that empowers your understanding of economic landscape. Join us daily as we dissect, discuss, and deliver the most relevant and factual news on business and the economy. Souk News is your trusted guide, empowering you with the knowledge to make informed decisions.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Good to know you're still with us on Early Exchange. And for the second half of the show, we've been looking at some political developments, how they also impact global economy. And first, we started with the decision by ECOWAS to remove sanctions placed on some of the countries that used to be part of ECOWAS. I'm talking about Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, that had said they no longer want to be part of ECOWAS because of the sanctions that were placed on them. And they feel like ECOWAS was high-handed, and so they had to leave. So we have Dr. Ken Ikenwa, who's been a guest, is a political affairs analyst, is a business analyst, is also a lecturer, and has been talking with us. Now, before we move away from the ECOWAS decision to look at something that is happening with NATO, Sweden has indicated bids to join NATO for quite a while now, and finally Hungary has ratified that bid. So we'll be looking at that in a short while. But first, we need to conclude talking about ECOWAS. And Femi has something to ask Dr. Ken Ikenwa.
All right. So, still talking about the ECOWAS thing, it will interest you to know that Russia is, was just one of the countries was just quick enough to commend ECOWAS.
We've got just what you need right here at Femi Wash Media. Call it the Midas touch and you wouldn't be wrong. Let us record, produce, mix and master your audio like nobody does. Reach us on our contact today for the best quality job.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, it's still your favorite program, Early Exchange, and we're not done yet. We're still looking at the implication of the sanction lifted by ECOWAS on Mali and others, and we still have Dr. Ken Nkemwa with us in the studio. Now, let's look at the position of Russia as regards this decision taken by ECOWAS. Russia has commended ECOWAS, publicly for making this decision. What do you make of the stand by Russia, and what might likely be the implication on the power play playing out between some of these countries, knowing the fact that Russia now is trying to position itself as the greatest business partner in Africa?
Well, for me, I will say, this is a new day, first day of the month of March, so I would say beware of the Ides of March. So I would say to member states, I would say to statesmen in Africa to beware of the Ides of March and not to beware of the Ides of Russia. But let's bring the discussion home. Africa is the beautiful bride of the world. And unfortunately, some 200 years ago, 150 years ago, there was the first and initial scramble for Africa. Now, where do the Ides come in, especially in the month of March, as we round up the first quarter of 2024? It is that there is a new scramble for Africa. And at the center of this scramble is not the goal of colonization. I don't even think it's the goal of neo-colonization. It is the goal of consolidating political positions across the length and breadth of the entire global economy. And that is what Russia is trying to do. That is what China is trying to do. That is what France is trying to do. And of course, if we should borrow from the Nigerian popular mantra now, USA is not going to agree for anybody. USA wants to ensure that they remain, there as the corner piece of decisions, of solutions, of business partnerships for all African countries, from the northern hemisphere, to the south. How should we handle this? I do not have any one clear-cut answer. All I would just say is that African leaders, African statesmen, African independent countries should look out for the best interest of their people. We are far behind, in the Committee of Nations. We have resources, mineral resources, human resources, intellectual resources that some countries, even in Europe, cannot boast of. So where these offers are coming, where this scramble is coming, we should sit down, we should engage the different intelligentsias in our different, African states. We should look at contracts, because every intention for partnership is based on contracts. We should make these contracts transparent. We should agree that there should be full disclosure, and whatever engagement any country is bringing, be it Russia, be it America, be it France, be it Portugal, my advice to African leaders, irrespective of their, whatever they are, whether they are in khaki or whether they're in agbada, always look through the contracts and be sure that it is in the best interest of the people. That way, we can keep in check the possibility that Africa and African countries will be recolonized again.
All right, let's look at Hungary ratifying Sweden's NATO bid, removing the final obstacle to their membership. Now, countries of Europe have been indicating interest to be part of NATO. So how do you see this, NATO receiving more members into its fold and even its role?
All right, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, it's been there, I think, I don't have the exact history, so I don't give false facts. But I think it was something an idea that was floated, I think, after the World War II or thereabout, and it's a treaty that brings together countries in the West, and with America being the anchor of that treaty, and with Donald Trump, the popular Trump, claiming that America pays too much, so much to be able to fund NATO and keep it going. But when issues like this come up, the first question you want to ask is, why did NATO come into being in the first place? And second, what has NATO actually been doing? Personally, and I speak on my own personal authority, as an African and as an observer, I don't think that NATO has actually existed to perform the functions that it was supposed to be performing. And I think more than being a backup, a buffer, for security of nations, it has gone away from that to even being an agent of neo-colonization. And what do I mean? What do I mean? And I say this without any degree of cowardice. What NATO did in Libya is on ground. History records it. And what NATO has failed to do, or what NATO failed to do in Rwanda, is on ground. History records it. So how do we reconcile that? All right, coming back home to Africa. But let's leave Africa. We have a lot of problems and we have a lot of prospects. And I know that your generation, my generation, our generation will fix Africa and make Africa, put Africa on that pedestal of greatness. Again, let's come back, to NATO and Sweden. Now, what is happening in Europe has a great multiplier effect on the global economy. You would see that, for the most part, the excuses that have been given for why there has been a global inflation has been centered around the epicenter or the theater of what Russia has chosen to call a special operation, being carried out in Ukraine. So a couple of nations are sitting back in Europe to say, look, if Ukraine, that is a sister nation in tongue, sister nation in culture, with a big country like Russia, could be treated this way, it means that we need to have some buffer in terms of security to avoid this happening to us. Because one of the objects of the treaty, the NATO treaty, is that an injury to one is an injury to all. So you attack one NATO member state or member country, others come after you. So we can now understand, I would say again, the raison d'etre, the reason and the basis for which Sweden and even Ukraine has been fighting tooth and nail to become part of the NATO bloc. What comes out of that? I think it is important that we do not plunge the world into another nuclear crisis and into another global economic crisis that will make life harder, for people, more than what we're experiencing down through Europe into Africa and to other parts of the world. So for NATO being accepted in, well, I was hoping to hear that it was even Ukraine that would be accepted in. But I think some member countries know the implications of having Ukraine coming in. Yeah, so I think especially Hungary and I think especially Turkey has stood against the possibilities of bringing in Ukraine, as it were. Because the real thing is that we must not fail to emphasize the politics behind NATO and the worry, that drives the dominant ideology in Russia. Now, Femi, we're guys, so let's talk as men. Let's judge all, and respect the lady, If you and I were sharing a boundary, for instance, and you heard that I was bringing some dangerous weapons, just behind your boundary where you farm, you have your plantation, and I have my plantation, how would you feel about that? Would you feel secure?
That cause for concern.
That is what NATO is all about when it comes to dealing with Ukraine and when it comes to dealing with countries that are very close to Russia. And that is what Russia is also saying, that we cannot allow you, because this happened in the 60s, during the communist incursion into Russia, when, what's the name of the man with the big cigar, Fidel Castro, invaded, I called it, I think it was, I forgot what they called it then, the invasion of the Gay of Pigs, or something, invaded and took over the country's governance and, turned it into a communist state. And in one way or the other, Russia brought bombs to come and was en route going to place those bombs, nuclear bombs, at the backyard of America to set them up in Cuba. I think it was J.F. Kennedy that was president then, and there was a strong resistance to that journey, to that strategy. So you now bring it back so some 40, 60 years down the line. You are now wanting to bring in nations into NATO, who you can now also go and place some strategic capabilities to defend those countries at the backyard of Russia. I believe what is good for the goose is good for the gander. If it was resisted by America in the 60s, I think Russia is in its own right to also resist that happens. My appeal to the leaders of the world, to the global leaders, is that please, please, please listen to us here at Sook News. Do not plunge the world into a World War III. The hunger that is ravaging the world is enough war against humanity. So having all these bombs flying left and right is not one thing we need at this point in time.
In the bid to say we're secure or we can better fight should be done with caution, right?
It should be done with a lot of caution. We don't need all of that. Countries should be allowed to just exist and let them build their own dominant ideologies on their own. Let them build their own political ideologies. Stop forcing your ideology on anybody. And it is all about live and let live.
All right, live and let live. So we'll leave it in the studio pretty soon. Thank you very much, Dr. Kenny Kewa, who is a business and also a public policy analyst, for being on the show with us and doing justice to the issues we discussed today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm so glad being here again.
All right, that's it. That's how the first edition of Early Exchange in the month of March went, and it's been a wonderful one. Thank you so much. Let's do this again Monday, 8 a.m. West African time. I am Blessing AJ. Enjoy your weekend. Remember to stay with Sook News all the way.
And from me to you, let's do all we can to protect our democracy, because the worst civilian rule or the worst democracy is even better than the best of military rule. Let's see what we can do to be patriotic, protect our nation and our continent. Don't forget, we'll return afresh on Monday. Have a great weekend. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.